Welcome to the Procon JCC Excellence Showcase. This afternoon's session is Fun Intensives, virtual engagement for youth with developmental disabilities and or autism spectrum disorder. The session will be led by the team from the Miles Nadal JCC in Toronto, Canada. My name is Mackenzie Adams, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Sheva Center at JCC Association of North America. This session is being recorded, and we understand that some people don't wish to be captured in the recording. So if that's the case, please feel free to turn off your camera at this point. Though we encourage, if you're comfortable, that you remain visible so we can all feel like we're in the room together. We received an outpouring of submissions for this excellent showcase, and while there was limited space in real time at Procon for presentations, we will share a post-conference digital library full of all of the submissions and presentations. We will be holding a Q&A at the end of the session. Please hold on to your questions or drop them in the chat at any point during the presentation, and we'll get to them at the end. And without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome today's presenters from the Miles Nadal JCC, Liv Mendelsohn, Director of Accessibility and Inclusion, Grace Smith, Access and Inclusion Manager, and Effie Biliris, Outreach Coordinator and Peer Support Facilitator at the Miles Nadal JCC. Thank you for the amazing presentation we're about to witness and for the important work that you do. We'd now like to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks. I'm so glad to see everybody here. We're going to share our PowerPoint and get rolling. And just a reminder that the closed captioning feature is available and you can turn it on the bottom of your screen. So fun intensive, I think the Zoom squares give you a sense of what this is about, but we had to very quickly, and I hate to use the word, but pivot when the pandemic shut down our JCC, and we have a network of around 300 youth with disabilities, ages 18, really 16, but officially 18 to 35, who we support and their families. And this program is about how we wanted to continue to offer that support and connection. Grace, can you flip it for me? Thank you. Okay, so who we are, you've heard our names, our bios are in the app. But I just want to note that all of this work works because of the wonder that is Grace Smith and the wonder that is Effie Biliris, and you're going to meet them very shortly. Next. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have a robust social network that runs during the year and involves all kinds of programming that is led by a Youth Accessibility Advisory Committee. So they guide our programming, they tell us what kind of programming interests them and what they'd like to see. And so we have lots of social programming events, all of which are set up as gateways to doing other things at the JCC. So it's a comfortable peer space. And then ideally, they're also doing, singing in the choir, swimming in the pool, playing basketball, whatever it is that their interest is with folks who with and without disabilities. So we have a supper club, which is about learning to cook and sharing a meal together. Let's talk about sex and relationships, all sorts of different programs that they inform us that they need. And we offer families and caregivers an affordable, lots of information, workshops on affordable, accessible housing, navigating financial planning, all sorts of stuff. And we have a Google group where they all connect and share resources with each other. So that's normal. That's during the before times. Flipper. So our JCC shut down, and within 24 hours, we heard right away from families and from young adults whose routines were disrupted. We heard from people who were lonely. Right away, their programs, jobs, volunteer opportunities, everything was canceled, and they were facing empty days. And we also had young adults who had moved out to independent living, moving back in with family. So that was a big trend as well. And we heard from parents and caregivers that they needed a break. They were worried about being able to support their young adult and to help them maintain the independence that they had developed. Flipper. Thanks, Grace.
So we turn. This is me now.
This is you. Perfect. Take it away.
Yes, you take a break, Liv. I'm going to talk a bit about program design, how we decide on our program goals, and how we arrive at our design principles. So as Liv said, we touched base pretty immediately with the Young Adult Accessibility Advisory Committee early in the pandemic, and we learned that for them and their peers, anxiety was very high. Most of them were missing their regular programs, whether they be arts-based, educational, or social. All of their programs and clubs that had facilitated self-expression and self-directed learning had suddenly been canceled, and very few substitutes had been presented yet. And as Liv said, with lockdown, there was a sudden reduction in their independence. Previous to the pandemic, most of them had developed routines and schedules that they felt comfortable going about fairly independently, and that was suddenly disrupted. Many were living with their parents again after having moved out on their own. Sorry, I muted myself again. So the Fun Intensive program needed to be designed to address those needs we had identified with the help of that committee. And many of their concerns were echoed by the parents and caregivers that we talked to, as you can see here. So I want to focus for a moment on the one-click approach, one of the first program design choices that we made. We had already started programming one-off or once-a-week Zoom programs by this point in the early pandemic. And these were 30 to 60-minute programs on varied topics. And they held the participants' interest. They had a good response. But for many, tracking all of these separate programs became a scheduling challenge. And each new Zoom meeting was a new opportunity for tech issues. So we wanted to offer maximum ease of use and the opportunity for independence. That's how we settled on the one-click program approach quite early in the process. So one click on a Zoom link each day would lead participants to 2 hours of programming, including 3 to 4 different activity modules. We would also offer one-on-one IT lessons and support to anyone who might need them. This one-click approach would also allow for participants to have social time with their peers apart from their parents and caregivers, who would not need to provide as much assistance to the participants during fun intensives. So in order to address the concerns brought to us by the Young Adult Committee, we knew we'd need to include modules that reduced anxiety and isolation, presented learning and skills training opportunities, got them moving around, and brought some cheer into their days and social time. We chose our module topics and activities accordingly, and you'll get to see an example of one of our schedules later. We also knew that the program needed to be designed in a financially accessible and flexible manner. We immediately sought out funders who were invested in our community and in our program goals, so we would be able to keep the program fees reasonable. And we chose a weekly fee structure so people can sign up for 8 weeks at a time, 1 week at a time, or anything in between. And we introduced a variety of discount levels for participants who either needed financial assistance or just would not be attending the entire program every day all week. So synthesizing all of those considerations, we arrived at these 3 design principles. We came back to these again and again when designing the final layout of the program: connection and engagement, learning skills and staying active, and some, breathing space for participants and their families. Finally, in designing the fun intensives, we found it vital to make use of the resources we already had. Our ongoing relationships with funders and with families in our community were key to getting started. As well, the fun intensives ended up being a really great way to maintain employment relationships with many of our program instructors whose regular programs had been canceled because of the pandemic. This was also an excellent opportunity to see where our programming gaps were, and so to bring on new instructors to fill those gaps. And because the program structure largely stays the same each week with small tweaks here and there, this allows our participants to regain that sense of routine while leveraging our time and resources, so no reinventing the wheel every week. We're still able to make changes as needed, such as when new feedback comes in from participants, like a request for different activities and topics. And now Effie's going to talk a bit about the program delivery.
So when it came to program delivery, there were three different factors that we kept in mind. So the first one was consistency, and that's mainly to ensure that the participants, as Grace mentioned, have a sense of routine. So nothing really changes as frequently as possible. Everything stays the same. The second one was with professional and educated instructors and staff who have previous experience working with people with disabilities and developmental needs. It's to ensure that the program remains at a high quality of programming. With the delivery of fun intensives, we implemented it with a lot of collaboration from whether it's family members, it's other departments in the JCC, and the community at large. Next slide. So here's an example of what this week's schedule looks like for the spring season. As you can see, it provides short programs which encompasses a larger program. Each activity is no less than 30 minutes in length and does not surpass 60. For what we've noticed is that the longer programs are more reserved for those with the most participant interest, which provide for more interactive participation. So the social focus, so during these times, the need for social interaction between peers is more crucial than ever, with everyone not seeing each other. So every day, 30 minutes of fun intensive is dedicated to moderated and casual social time. And to maintain the focus of the participants, typically what we would do is we would predetermine a topic of the day, which then becomes the point of focus in their conversations, while still providing opportunities for casual conversations to occur. So it'll be like, let's say if I do 30 minutes of programming, it's 20 minutes of moderated chat and then 10 minutes of social time. Next slide, guys. So these next slides will showcase the visual artworks completed by the participants during the 30-minute guided drawing session, which is led by a local visual artist. So here is the they all drew whales in this photo, and you can see the pictures that they drew. And in the next slide, was that two or one? All right. And then this is where they all drew deer in the previous one. Yeah. Great. So program facilitation tips. So in my experience, participants feel a different sense of ease when the facilitator has first-hand experience of understanding and living with a developmental disability. They feel comfortable, they feel like they can talk to them, they can relate to them. And the aspect that I feel has been a huge factor in the success of Fun Intensive is that every participant feels respected through that individualized, professional, yet cordial relationship that they have with me. So they can come to me with any concerns that they have, and they won't feel like their concerns are invalid.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk a bit now about program evaluation. To ensure that we were evaluating this program in an accessible manner and that we were getting feedback from everyone, we offered our participants the choice between completing participant surveys or participating in focus groups over Zoom. This allowed participants to offer feedback via text or conversationally based on which one of those they find more comfortable. We also sent out a survey to be filled out by parents and/or caregivers, which allowed us to evaluate how the Fun Intensive program impacted families as a whole. And some of the program adjustments we've made in the past year were response to feedback we received this way. And that includes extending the time of the most highly rated activities, like Effie mentioned, from 30 minutes to 60 minutes, and the introduction of topics like different science topics every week. We're all artists, so we tend to lean a bit arts-based, but when science is asked for, we will provide science. So here you'll see some of the response rates to our participant survey questions. And I want to highlight in particular the high level of social connections made, and that 100% of participants surveyed reported learning something new. If you remember our earlier slide, combating social isolation and presenting learning opportunities were two of the goals presented to us by our youth committee and that we decided on as design principles. And here you can see response rates to some of our parent caregiver survey questions. And for this one, I want to highlight in particular the last point. 100% of parents and caregivers surveyed agreed that the program was, quote, an important part of our family's COVID response. This entire program was built in response to the challenges presented by the pandemic. So to learn that it had helped not just the participants, but also their families cope with the difficult context of this moment was very encouraging. And Liv, back to you.
So I think one of the beauties of this program, again, is this one-click model. And that means no materials really other than a pen and pencil at the ready. So nobody has to set anything up. No one has to assist with opening and moving things. There's nothing. It's the person, the device they're using, and maybe a pen and a piece of paper. And I think we are now in a position to start thinking about what things look like when we go back to being together in person. And we want to capitalize on the great things about this program, which allowed people from outside of our JCC area to participate. People who can't or don't normally come to the JCC and can't or don't normally leave their homes were able to participate. And we don't want to lose that. So we're looking at hybridity. We're also really concerned, I particularly am concerned about staff burnout. You all met Effie here. She's extraordinary. And she is the heart and soul of this program and is present for more than 18 hours a week of live programming. We do have other staff and instructors, but Effie is always there for the participants. So we want to be mindful of what is going to be possible on an ongoing basis. So lots to think about for what the next 18 months looks like. And we're definitely going to keep the online model together with an in-person model. Next slide, Grace. Thank you. So I won't read through all of this, but if you want the slides, they'll be sent out. But really, I'll just read the first one. Meeting new people is giving me something to do, so I am not bored. I don't want to be just watching TV and playing video games 24/7, which is really boring. And that is what was happening for a lot of these young adults. Next slide. Yeah, none of this would be possible without our amazing funders. The Ontario Trillium Foundation is a government funded program, and the other two are family foundations. And we're very, very grateful to them for making available really emergency funding for this. Next slide. Okay, there we go. That is us. And let's stop screen sharing and bring back the team. And I really want to highlight the versatility. I think this is a program that is not expensive to put on. And with the right staff and some of the tips Effie was talking about is very, very doable and provides a lot of support and community for these families, some of whom were struggling with, emergence of violent or difficult behavior that hadn't been there in many years. loss of skills, regression. It's very, very frustrating, as we all know, when your routines are changed. And we really tried to bring back some of that sense of structure. Mackenzie, do you want to highlight Effie and Grace?
Of course, spotlight's
Thank
coming
you.
soon.
Because you've heard enough from me. And we are wide open to any questions you might have about how to do something similar at your J.
Please feel free to unmute yourself. We have a nice group here, and or utilize the chat to ask any questions, or you can raise your virtual hand. You'll rise to the top of our participant list and we'll know to unmute you, whatever feels most comfortable.
Okay, here we go. How were you engaging people from other communities and what was the cost to them? So the way the program is set up, as Grace mentioned, it's a weekly cost, and there's if people need financial accessibility, it's built in thanks to our funders. So we are based in Toronto. We have people joining us. We've had people in our programs from Ottawa, which is a city that is not that close to us, from London, Ontario, from Montreal, from Hamilton. So we've had people from lots of other communities. And it's a great opportunity for people to make new friends. Effie can speak maybe a little bit to that.
Yeah, so we just have a lot of participants who come from, and it's done by one of the mouths. So if participants really enjoy it, they tell their friends about it, and they come and join, and they feel welcome straight from the get-go. And it provides a sense of comfort for them too, to know that they have that familiar face in their friend who's in the group as well.
And in some ways, the disability world is a small world. A lot of folks know each other. They've met somebody from the program at camp before, or they've met them at RJ, or they were at a school program, or so there are a lot of those connections and rediscovered connections. Someone asked about numbers. So we have space for 25 people each week. It's not the same 25 each week, although there are some people who've done every week of the program since June of last year. So there's always some new people. There's quite a mix of people, and I think 25 is about the number we would do with one facilitator paired with instructors. Otherwise, it gets to be a little bit too chaotic. Another question, how many, were we able to engage participants with more significant disabilities? Effie, do you wanna chat about that?
Yeah, so they pretty much range from completely independent to needing a little bit of support, whether it's like with participation, with communication. So we don't say no to anybody who wants to join. If they need support, what we would do is we would encourage them to try to bring someone that they are familiar with until they get comfortable with the entire group. Yeah, I think. Anybody else have anything they want to add to that?
There's another question. What does it cost to run the program in person versus virtually? Thanks to our funders, it's a more challenging question to ask because really the program is underwritten by funding. But actually, interestingly, this program, because it's already underwritten, this program contributes to the bottom line of the JCC. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think, we make it available free to those who need it for free. And those who are able to contribute, a lot of people use their direct service funding that they get from the government for programs. For a lot of people, this was the only program that they could find during this period. So it has been great for the community and also great for the J. Staten Island is doing great stuff. I know Florida, Debbie's team in Florida at Biliris has also done a great program. I think this program, because it's every day at the same time, You know, we had a lot of families, sorry, my phone is ringing, just ignore, tell us, you know, they know that that's their time. So they can set it up, log in, and then their young adult will be like, go away, which is what you want, is that independence. And then parent or caregiver can take a nap or take a walk around the block, or, you know, even just watch a TV show. We know there are some moms who do wine time during during this time, but it's a guaranteed time every day where people get a little bit of space from each other. It's 2 hours where people can be social and hang with Effie, which is always a delight. And for the families, it's been really really important to them. It's also a time when they can spend time with other siblings in the family, or, you know, partners can spend time with each other, or even just go grocery shopping. All of that has become very, very hard. Effie, go ahead.
I'll add to that. And also, when Liv was talking about how they can spend time with the peers, so that they can interact with people who are like-minded to them as well.
Yeah.
For like 2 hours a day.
And the fact that Effie brings lived experience herself is so important, because it really makes it immediately clear to people that this is a place where they can be themselves, because she's being herself. And that is so powerful. Grace, do you want to talk to all the evaluation pieces?
Well, actually, I was going to add to the cost question, if that's okay, because I think obviously it's incredibly useful and wonderful that our program is underwritten. But if anyone wants some keys to how the costs are calculated for your own purposes, I can give you a bit of insight into that. So we basically, like Liv said, it's not a very expensive program to run. It's actually, because it's the same each week, it's fairly easy on our time and resources. But the cost to factor in is, as both Effie and Liv said, it's very vital to have a peer facilitator there for the entire time. So that is one person that you are paying for the full 20 hours a week of programming. And then we pay our individual instructors for their 30-minute slots. And one thing that's really great about this program being virtual is there's a lot of these instructors who it might not be worth their time to come down to the J for a 30-minute class, but it's quite easy for them to Zoom in for a 30-minute class and a little less taxing on them. It also means that we're able to get a higher diversity of instructors who might live farther away, or who, again, if they have accessibility concerns, again, getting down to the JCC for a 30-minute class might be a bit difficult, but easy enough to Zoom in. So you have your 30 minutes chunks of teacher fees, your peer facilitator fee, and then really after that, it's just Zoom fees and marketing. It's a pretty reasonable class to calculate the cost for, and it's pretty easy on the resources.
There's a question about the future of Zoom programs, and I think that's something we're all grappling with, because like I mentioned, we don't want to leave behind people who've for the first time felt included, people who can't get to RJ or who don't leave their homes. So that's the big question, is about how to make hybridity work, and not just feel like there's like, you know, a camera in the room recording stuff that you're not really part of, if you're Zooming in and other people are live. How to make it interactive and how to make it work. And I think we can actually really learn a lot from the teacher community who've had to do this for a year with some students in classrooms and other students at home. And some things have worked well and some things have worked less well. So I think there's a lot of rich learning there for us as we start to experiment with how to keep this going for people for whom this has been a real lifeline, and they've come to us for the first time online.
Yeah, we heard from people in the evaluations that they had never been able to come to the JCC before because they lived too far away and transit was too difficult for them, but they'd always wanted to, and now they finally can.
It's incredible. And I cannot believe that you managed to get so much information and to share your amazing story in 30 short minutes. So I really apologize for jumping in and having to close the session, but thank you, Grace, Effie, and Liv, so much for sharing your story and helping us think through how similar programs can be launched at JCCs across the continent. It's incredibly exciting, and we just thank you so much for your preparation of this session and for your time. They very kindly shared their contact information on the last slide of their PowerPoint presentation, which will also be uploaded to SpotMe and will be available to you all. And starting right now, a second set of JCC Excellence Showcase sessions are beginning. They are completely different from the ones that took place this current session, and you can find the full list on SpotMe. So we'll see you at the next one. And thank you again to the Miles Nadal team for this incredible session. Thank you.